Good morning, everyone. Let the record show that we have a quorum present, and let me apologize again this morning for Ms. Barbara Conley, who is acting as the Minister of Finance, and Mr. David White, who has taken the decision to recuse himself because the witness that we're going to consider next is his brother, and also for this afternoon because he is the counselor for the Minister of Tourism. So at this stage, I'll invite the Deputy Sergeant at Arms to bring the witness in.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give to this honorable legislative assembly shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Good morning, Mr. White, and on behalf of the committee, let me extend our thanks for you agreeing to appear before the committee this morning as a witness in your role as Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Cayman Turtle Conservation and Education Center Limited. And you will have been made aware that what is under consideration today is the 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019 accounts of the turtle farm. The only rule is that the first question that you're asked to, we ask you to state your full name and your role so that that will be recorded properly in the Hansards of the House. So I guess I'll lead off with the questions. And let me assure you that this committee is not interested in any gotcha movements or taking any adversarial position. We prefer to work in a collaborative spirit. We're simply trying to get to the bottom of what the issues are and how best to make recommendations to resolve or correct them. So I guess my first question is, can you confirm that the Board of Cayman Turtle Farm and Conservation Center Limited was operating in full compliance with both the Public Authorities Law and the standards in public life law?
Mr. Chairman, my name is Brian White. I'm Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Cayman Turtle Conservation and Education Center Limited. In answer to your question, to the best of my knowledge, we are in compliance with both of those laws.
That's good. Okay. Did the board yesterday? We took evidence, which you probably are aware, from your CEO and your Chief Operating Officer, and one of the things that came up during that evidence was a report done by Deloitte Consultancy. Can you confirm that the board reviewed and approved the restructuring of the salaries for top management at the Turtle Center and the salary increases that were recommended by Deloitte Consultancy?
I can confirm that we reviewed and actually were part of the whole study done by Deloitte, and it wasn't just top management, it was a whole, I mean, they surveyed the whole staff and the whole operation and made recommendations and any changes for the whole operation.
Okay. Was the report which you were presented at the board a final report or a draft report?
As far as I know, it was a final. They made a presentation. They came to our boardroom and had a presentation that they made to us. And I do know you asked the question, and it did say draft, and that when I've looked, that's what mine says as well.
Right.
But as far as I know, that was the final. As far as I know, we haven't received something that said final, but that was the final presentation they made to us, which. The presentation was a summary, or
Yeah. But would you agree that the part of the duty of your CEO, who I assume would be managing this consultancy on behalf of the board, what should have been to ensure that a final report was received?
I would say we probably should have a final report, yes.
Okay. Just sort of a matter of course, I should have done it yesterday, and the same thing happened yesterday. It's happened now. I got caught up in the moment and I forgot to. I think it is important that I declare that my brother Jerris Miller works at the turtle farm in one of the, I don't know what his title is, I believe a middle management of some sort position. But none of the questions, I have had no discussions with my brother about any of this stuff. So I just want to make that clear, so that he doesn't get accused down the road of somehow leaking stuff to the chairman of the PSC. Because one of the troubling things we have as a committee is that we asked for this report yesterday, and we were only supplied with a draft copy, and in further correspondence with the CEO, he did not appear to know whether they had gotten a final report or not. And I just wanted to say publicly that I worked with Tara Jackman for 6 years, and I know him as a consummate professional and almost a perfectionist when it comes to work from Deloitte in the department. I can't imagine a situation where he would not have delivered a final report. But the problem we have now is that all of us, it seems like many decisions were made by the board and the CEO on what appears to have been a draft report. And concerns that I have is, if there is a final report, were there any changes made to that final report that are not reflected in the decisions that were made? So you're not aware that a final report came?
I'm not aware of a different report, let's put it that way.
Okay.
I don't have a copy of it, and I took that to be the final, to be honest. Only on looking back on it now, mine does say draft too.
Okay.
So.
We received evidence yesterday that it appears that there were 2 salaries advances in 2019. Can you confirm that there were 2? Increases rather, sorry, not advances.
We're in relation.
Okay, the evidence we got yesterday indicated 2 things. One, there was a salary restructuring which led to some people getting increases in salaries based on the restructuring, right? Then there appears to be a second salary increase, that evidence we received yesterday, that appears to be still before the board, but those who got that salary increase have been receiving the salary increase from anywhere from 2 months to 6 months.
Okay, I now understand
Okay.
what you mean, and I thank you. If you'd like, I can explain how we became aware of it and what
Sure.
we did about it and where
Right.
it is as far as I'm aware. Now, in June of this year, we became aware that there had been a mistake, and I'll put it that way, made by the HR department. And as I'll try and, I mean, it's layman's terms, but I'll try and explain how I understand it.
Right.
The pay policy guide was interpreted to mean that those who had an anniversary of 1 year or 10 years, when it was instituted, the intention of it was there was some adjustment to be made to those two, based on the length of time they've been there. The intention of the pay policy guide was that it was a one-off payment, which was to adjust with the incoming of the pay policy guide. It was interpreted that the salary should then stay at that level. And so, unbeknownst to any of us, the board had approved the pay policy guide. So obviously HR felt the board has approved it, so they can go ahead with it, but their interpretation wasn't what was in the pay policy guide. And it was only picked up, like I say, in June of this year. It was brought to the board's attention. We then went through ways we could remedy it, because it was never intended. It was, like I say, it was a mistake. We came up with a number of options, I think 4 possible options, and we went to the chief officer of the ministry and told him what had happened and put forward our possible options. And I also asked him if he would get an opinion from the Attorney General as to how was the best way to deal with it, and in terms of making sure we weren't breaking laws. And he came back with that, his opinion. Now, he couldn't recommend which one to take, but basically, the 4 options were: one was to take back the salary from those who had received it. The second one would be to leave it as it was and say it was a pay increase. The third one was to what we call red circle it. And as time went on and pay increases were given, rightfully so, over years or whatever, they wouldn't get increases until it had reached their level. And the fourth option was to red circle it and allow the increases to take place, but they would not get an increase until they, in effect, had paid back the amount that they'd gotten ahead. And the first option, the Attorney General advised we shouldn't try to take back salary from staff. We had given it to them, formally notified them they got it, and it wasn't right to take it back, as I understand it. And in the end, the board decided to go with the fourth option, which was red circling it, and over the years, I believe there's a chart, I don't have it and can't tell you, but some would be much quicker than others, some would be a bit longer, as much as years. When their salary had reached where it should have been above the red circled amount, they would not have an increase until the full amount they'd received in error had been paid back, and only after that time would their salaries start to increase.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
We then, I can just finish it. We then agreed on that, and in fact, the HR department has already informed those staff, and it's already in hand in that way. So they've been informed that that's the decision we made, and that's how it's going to go forward. There was 24 staff, I believe, and a total of $23,000 total has been paid more than should have been up till October, I think.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the witness, I'd like to introduce the fifth option, which is some level of disciplinary action against what has happened here. And I can tell what is driving my concern. Yesterday, I specifically had asked the Chief Operating Officer the process that you go through for a salary increase. Now, for every other employee, because the way I'm looking at it is this: barring the CEO, every employee is managed by the CEO, and then the CEO is accountable to the board. So of the 23 employees that would have received it, the CEO would have the green light to approve 22 of them within the policy, if the policy has been approved. And any employee who received that increase would have received it in good faith because it is something that's approved by the CEO. Because the specific process that was given ended with a sign-off by the CEO. Where I'm a little bit lost is when it came on to the CEO specifically. That is automatically red flag to a board. No CEO should get any pay increase or any compensation or any change without board approval. And going back to 2009 when it was revealed that a previous managing director at the time did exactly the same thing. And bearing in mind also that the Public Authorities Law came in specifically for some of these outside government entities that are these runaway policies. It is really discouraging and disheartening that in 2019, literally 10 years after we have had this issue before, at the same organization with a previous managing director at the time, I think that was the title, that we still have a same repeat of this. And this is the kind of actions, or in some cases inactions, that basically questions us, and why is it that we're basically here today looking at an organization. And Mr. Chairman, I just want to, Chairman for the Turtle Center, one of the things that we established yesterday was simply this. The Turtle Center itself, I would hazard to say, as a full support of just about every member of this House. As I said yesterday to the CEO at the time, if you take the government subsidy of roughly $10 million a year, where $6 million of that went towards paying the debt, the real subsidy is $4 million from an operational standpoint. From that $4 million, we get an organization that employs roughly over 100 staff, majority of which are Caymanians, understand on a 4-work permit, directly. It employs another 400 to 500 Caymanians indirectly from people who sell tours and buses and everything that goes to the turtle farm. And on top of that, it also provides an attraction that basically have over 200,000 tourist visits a year. So where else can you find almost 500, 600 people employed, attracting over 200,000 people a year, and it costs the public $4 million, when one of the things that a lot of visitors complain about is lack of attractions. So it is, in my opinion, that $4 million is well spent. Now, ultimately, naturally, we like to see that amount reduced, but I'm not going to sit back and say that I do have a problem with that $4 million. Same as with Cayman Airways, I consider Cayman Airways an economic accelerator. It is necessary for overall tourism product, and we have to maintain the bigger picture, or always look at the bigger picture. But the issue has always been governance, and in particular, the history of the Turtle Center, even from Forest Turtle Farm. There's a culture there that it seems as if though they make up their rules as they go. And it is that culture that needs to be addressed. And the people that we expect to be fixing it are generally the ones that we find somehow perpetrating the same issue. And there is, under no scenario in any organization can any CEO change any of his compensation thing without any board approval. And that one alone is a serious red flag for me. And I think, and we have asked our Auditor General to go in and take a deeper look in terms of the processes, because the process that was explained to us, the fact that the CEO signs off on it, and if you find yourself signing off on an increase for yourself, that alone should have sent up a red flag. And credit to the CEO, this is not his first rodeo in terms of being in senior management, so this ain't something new. And I really believe that the board need to take a more serious action on what has gone on here. But this can't be a situation, because I can tell you, any employee goes out there and give themselves an increase without the proper approval is considered theft. They'll be fired. I have people sitting in Northwood prison that is in my constituency for that exact same action. So this can't be a situation where at this level, where the highest paid executive has signed off on this, and then it becomes, let us see how we can ratify it. That's not governance. And that is one of the things I think that the board, what we're looking for today from the board and from your testimony today as a witness, is the governance structure in place to make sure that culture that exists in the turtle farm isn't there, or at least it is being dealt with. But I believe a fifth option needs to be considered in terms of what breakdown there was in the process for this to have happened, because if this had happened in the organization, people will be fired or people will be locked up, they'll be arrested. This can't just be these four things and no, this can't work. So I just need to get that off my chest. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
I just want to continue that. Was the CEO one of the 23 people that got this mistaken salary increase?
Thanks for the questions, Mr. Chairman. To answer yours first, yes, he was.
Okay. Secondly,
But, I just needed to answer.
no, I think he was just making a statement more than a question. Okay, if you want to answer him, go ahead.
I think the mistake is the CEO did not sign off on a pay increase. It was never a pay increase. In reality, it did increase, but we never did a pay increase. The mistake was made in the interpretation of the pay policy guide, and the board had approved the pay policy guide. So the HR department, the board has approved it. This is what we do. And they went ahead and made an increase. They never got approval from the CEO on it because it had been approved by the board, is my understanding of this. So it was in place. They thought this is what should be done and continued to do it. Now, yeah. But,
You have confirmed that the CEO was one of the persons that got this benefit, whether it was a salary increase or a one-time payment. Does the CEO attend your board meetings on a regular basis?
yes,
Did he recuse himself in accordance with Section 43(2) of the Public Authorities Law from all discussions related to this mistaken benefit?
no, not when it came to light, no. He was involved in telling us, exactly what had happened. And, yeah.
But you are aware of the standards in public health law, which requires that be done. This Public Authorities Law requires that it be done. And your evidence here today is that the board, the CEO, did not volunteer to recuse himself, and the board did not insist that he recuse himself.
That is true.
Okay, all right. I think that the Section 47, I know yesterday the COO and the CEO relied on subsection 2 of 48 to justify this what I will call a benefit, since you say it was a salary increase. What was this, did they get this as a one payment, or was it an increase to a certain amount that they collected monthly and will continue to collect under the decision of the board?
My understanding, it was meant to be, the way it was meant to be, was a one-off payment to make an adjustment when this pay policy guide came into effect. My understanding is that the HR department thought that adjustment was ongoing. In other words, the adjustment was the amount they should be paid each month going forward, but it wasn't. It was meant to be just that one time.
Let me give you, for instance, the HR policy may have awarded employee $150 based on the point system that you all approved of the board, and they should have gotten one single payment of $150, but they have received $150 every month for over a year.
Well, some are not a year, but they have received it since they started getting it, because it was depending when the first year anniversary came in, straight, after, or the 10-year anniversary of their employment. Right. That's when it was given. So I think there's been, they all weren't at the same time, is my understanding.
Okay.
But they have been receiving that extra amount each month, and that's where the problem is.
Okay. And you would be aware that Section 47(1) says all public authorities shall use the same salary scale as determined by Cabinet, and all jobs shall be evaluated by the same job evaluation methodology. Did the board seek Cabinet approval for the restructuring salary scales recommended by Deloitte?
Yes, we did. Or through this chief officer, yes.
And it went to Cabinet, and you have records in the minutes that show that Cabinet approval prior to your final approval?
Well, we received the approval through the CO, the chief
Yeah.
officer.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, through the chief officer in the ministry. Okay, and I know that some sections of the public authority law didn't come into the 1st of June 2019, but certainly the law itself was first came into effect in the 30th of May 2018, and all those clauses are in the law. They were not added in 2019. Can I ask if you would supply the committee with all of the board minutes for your meetings for 2019? And could we also ask for a copy of all of the correspondence, whether it went through the chief officer in the ministry, to the Attorney General's chambers, for the advice that would show the matter you wanted advice on, what you were requesting advice on, and what advice did the Attorney General give you?
Yes, I make that undertaking to
Okay,
get that
okay.
for you.
All right, okay.
Mr. Chairman, through you, could we also have a copy of the pay policy guide? Because I think that will clarify a lot of things. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, yesterday and today I'm hearing the same song. The HR made a mistake. But sitting in here, I asked the COO, does HR answer to you? Yes. Does IT answer to you? Yes. The board that decides it, she's on everything, the COO, well-being, okay. So it's not the HR's fault, because everything that the HR, she has, the COO has to approve. Then in turn, she should take it to the CEO. That's the usual thing in most companies. Mr. Chair, do you know that Caymanians resigned and left the turtle farm because of this incident?
You, Mr. Chair, I did not.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, you've heard the questions and the statement that have been made. But it's one thing, this is not HR department's fault. If I have to answer to my boss, I can only do what my boss allows me to do. So it's not the HR department's fault, because I can interpret something, but at the end of the day, there are two bosses above me, especially the COO, who seems to be, has to stamp everything, but no one seems to want to accept their responsibility and their blame. Just throw the HR, whoever's HR, under the bus, or throw the board under the bus. Now, the pay policy guide was approved by the board in December 2018, am I correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe it was, yes.
Okay, and that was brought about because of the Deloitte.
That is correct.
Okay, anywhere, or does this board also, do your board approve or give the COO or anybody permission that they can take the people's money and pay for permanent residence for someone? Do you know, is that a policy of the board?
No, through you, Mr. Chair, no.
Okay. Does the board also, did the board also approve for the CEO or whoever that's to pay for the dependents administration fee on work permits?
Again, not to my knowledge.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, yesterday I asked the CEO about changing job descriptions to suit certain people. And in my humble opinion, I think she lied, because Caymanians, there's not going to be a Caymanian chef that's going to have something called a Red Seal certification on their thing. If they're going to Edinburgh, if they're going any place else. But, like I said, I could be wrong in thinking that we were not told the truth, but it was changed, and I had the copy. The first description of that position never had nothing about a Red Seal certification. But the Red Seal certification, Mr. Chairman, was added, and it so happened that this person who applied had it on their qualifications.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize for interrupting the member. However, I have to call a point of order. The member is making some rather broad allegations to the chairman of the board, whether it be paying for permanent residents, accusing the witnesses of lying, and I have to ask whether or not the member has proof of these broad allegations, because this is going out, being transmitted to the public.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, could you look into these allegations? Payments was made, if payments were made for a certain individual for their permanent residence. Number two, if the turtle farm has paid for the dependents' administrative fee on their work permits, and if on the chef, look on the first one, yeah, you see there was no Red Seal certification, and on the second one it was. No Caymanian has that. Mr. Chair, another thing that the Caymanians said that they didn't know about the job was they kept looking in the compass where the job ad was used, only to find out after the fact that it was put into the Cayman Times. So maybe this is something that the board can decide to say, let us put our adverts for our board in both newspapers, and let us look at how these job qualifications are set up. If it's blocking qualified Caymanians, not making something fit for certain sections of people or where they come from. Since it doesn't seem to be the policy of the board, but these things, sir, I am 100% sure, regardless of what the member from Prospect jumps in and tries to slow me down, I'm 100% sure, and the facts are right there at the turtle farm, sir. I'm defending Caymanians.
Thank you for the statement. The number two, CTC paid for not the permanent residents, but what was the second one you said?
The administrative fees. Administrative fees on the work permits for the spouses of someone who we have a contract with or a work permit for.
So, well, Mr. Chairman, through you, I could just simply say I'm not aware of any job descriptions changing. They were set through the Deloitte survey and study, and I'm not aware of any changing, as you've mentioned, but I can look into it.
But you must admit, Mr. Chair, a Red Seal certification, which is only out of Canada, makes it very hard for any of us, even how much qualified we are.
Mr. Chairman.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I have no idea what a Red Seal is, and I can only ask the question. I don't know why it's there. If it needs to be there, I can only ask.
Like, yes, Mr. Chairman, true, like what the member from Prospect said, he's right. But I'm asking you to go and look into this, and you can answer us back. Thank you very much. That's all I'm asking then. I'm corrected by the member to do it in the correct way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That really is the only point I wish to express to the member. Certainly, I'm not trying to hold him back, restrict him, or anything. The member began to impute improper motive, and I was simply reminding this committee that there is a process, a standard. If we are to make allegations, we must be able to prove it. They were very broad in nature. I defend Caymanians as well, but certainly we must stand on the premise of truth and facts in this committee, Mr. Chairman, which I know you appreciate.
Yeah, I think that I don't regard the member as being out of order, because my recollection was he was bringing certain things to the attention of the chairman for him to look into them. And I would suspect that the member can provide the chairman with evidence of his thing. You had some questions, Mr. Austin?
I do, if the member has finished his questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, I again want to thank the witness for attending this morning, sharing some of his otherwise busy schedule with us. I want to echo the sentiments of the member from Bordentown West in assuring him that all on this committee are supportive of the Cayman Islands Turtle Center and the intrinsic value it offers to the economy. I want to talk specifically about observations in the Auditor General's report as it relates to revenues and expenses. Yesterday, I highlighted what I thought was the positive financial performance from, I think it's 2017 to 2019, which has been a team effort, and certainly I won't go over that again. But on page 4 of the Auditor General's report, under the going concerns, I think it's paragraph 14, the third paragraph, it states, furthermore, operational results subsequent to 31st December 2018 and 2019 indicate that the company continues to generate significant losses from operations and experiences cash flow difficulties, and therefore continues to rely on government for funding. It goes on to state, the Board of Directors have been working to design, and continues on page 5, and implement a number of cost-saving measures, as well as increasing profitability by exploring new revenue streams. Certainly we heard of some of those cost-saving measures and profitability revenue streams. I wonder if the chairman can share with us what actions the board will seek to implement to introduce cost savings and new revenue so that we can maintain the positive financial performance, the growth in shareholder equity, and so on.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. It's a continuing effort, and we are continually looking at cost savings, and we've been fairly successful in being able to make systems more efficient and cut costs as best as we can. And it's a constant, ongoing thing. We're also constantly looking at new ways. The marketing team is always looking for new ways to try and generate new income streams. And it's a continual thing that we're doing. And the board, although not directly necessarily involved in it, will get reports on what they're thinking and trying to do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, yesterday when the CEO and the COO gave testimony, they identified that utilities represent a significant expense on your overall balance sheet. According to your 2018 annual report, page 35, on the expense analysis, it lists the utility expense as accounting for 11% of the overall expense budget. And that's particular to, I think, the water turbines and whatnot. The center uses, as one can imagine, a significant amount of water, and that water has to be transported from tank to tank to keep the animals alive. I wonder if the board is exploring any means of sustainable or renewable energy to produce the electricity required to run these pumps, or are we still dependent on the traditional CUC model of diesel-generated electricity?
For the time being, we're dependent on the CUC generated electricity. There has been talk, but nothing concrete to this time of solar generated power. But I think it's something we would have to work with CUC on, according to their agreement and everything. It's something that we certainly can look at if there's a way of doing it. The water generation is a big driver of the electricity expense. And we have been looking at, we have to redo the piping because there's a lot of clogging that's been going on over the years. And it's a major, major job. And it's something we were building up to. Of course, COVID has kind of put a stop to that. But it's something that we're going to have to do fairly shortly. And that should help with the electricity efficiency as well, because what's happening is you're having to pump more water through at a higher pressure because of the buildup of, the salt buildup or whatever it is that they build up in the pipes.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, through you, just one final follow-up. I'm glad the Chairman mentioned COVID. Certainly COVID will have an impact on the revenue streams to the centre. We see also from the same annual report that admissions accounts for 58% of overall revenue. In the absence of tourism traffic, certainly we can anticipate that the 2020-2021 annual reports may show a significant decline on those revenues. And that is why, in my mind, when we know revenues are going to fall short, then we need to consider all avenues of cutting those or creating more cost-saving measures. So on the subject, again, of utilizing renewable sources of energy, has the board conducted any sort of cost-benefit analysis as it relates to renewable energy? What it might save by going, for example, a solar route versus the traditional diesel route? Or have those discussions just been general in nature?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thanks for the question. The simple answer is we really haven't gone into any detail. It's a very good idea, and it's something that we probably should and will look at in terms of how it could be done and what the effect would be in terms of saving and benefits to the centre. But it's been, if anything, a general conversation to this point, nothing in terms of a study or nothing concrete. But I'll certainly bring that up.
Thank you to the witness. Through you, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
I want to get back to what I regard as probably the most serious evidence that we've received so far, is that the CEO did not recuse himself and the board did not insist that he recuse himself. And I just want to see if I can understand what the board decision has been, what the board decision is on that mistake. Okay. As I understand it, when it was brought to the board's attention, I would assume by the CEO, the board considered a number of options and came up with 4 scenarios. And the scenario that the board has now approved is that those 24 people will continue to receive that monthly increase, and they will not, they have been rate circled so that those 24 people will not receive any across the board salary increases until everybody else at the Turtle Center has got the equivalent percentages or some formula of salary increase over whatever period of time that takes, which is probably, given everybody's now blaming COVID, maybe 10 years.
Mr. Chairman, the COVID has certainly thrown a spanner in the works in terms of timing, but it goes further than that. It's not just a matter of when they catch them up. They, in effect, would really overtake them, because then they're going to start paying back what they've received over and above what they should have done. So their equivalent or their colleague who would be an equivalent salary would actually be receiving more the affected employees would be red circled at the salary they're receiving now, and they would receive more until the amount that they've gotten over has been paid back, and then they can start getting their increases.
But I don't understand that. You lost me somehow. The board has agreed that these people, let's just say it's $100. I don't know what the figure is. But those 24 members, or any one of those 24 members, will continue to receive that $100 going forward until the person at his equivalent level in the organization who was not one of these 24 people gets salary advances, whether that's because of they put in 1 year, whether it's a time for length of service or for performance appraisals or whatever. And when that person catches up with this one that got $100, the person will then have each month after that $100 deducted from his salary until he paid back the money that he got.
Mr. Chairman, no. The first thing is he's not going to have it deducted. He will continue to receive his salary. The other thing is it's not in, I said I was using the colleague as an equivalent, but I mean a colleague may not get the increase he got because he did a, like you say, performance-based or whatever. So it's really going to be based on the individual. He will not, if he was due an increase in salary, he will not receive that increase in salary until, first of all, it reaches the level that he should have been at. In other words, he's now receiving $100 over. If he was due to get $100 increase in salary, he won't get an increase of where he is now because he would be equivalent. But further than that, if he then is next year due another $100 in increase, he won't get that increase either until you take away the additional 100 each month. When that reaches the amount that he's received over what he should have received this year or from 2000, whenever he started, then he can get his increase.
If I was the employee that got this windfall, I would look at the progress around me till it coming close to me, and then I'd quit and keep my money. I can't understand why. Okay, I understand.
That is an issue, and there's not much that we feel we can do about that if someone does quit.
But I think I understood you said that the legal advice you got said that you could not take the money back having given it, right?
That's how I understood it, yes.
Okay. But certainly that advice would have to be framed in some kind of way that, but let me ask the question this way. Did the board ask the CEO to make any attempt to explain to the people who got this windfall that it was a mistake and they need to pay it back? Because I would have thought that would be the first option, to see if he could get the people to agree that a mistake was made and they would give it back.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think we had that conversation until we had decided what we were going to do. So I don't think we did not instruct the CEO to go and ask them to give it back.
And the CEO obviously didn't volunteer that by setting an example with himself and says, yes, I got this and I shouldn't have gotten it, but as CEO, I'll set an example to the members of staff and give it back over the same period of time that I received it.
No,
Okay.
no, he didn't.
Mr. Chairman, through you, did the COO also get one of these pay raise, or whatever you call it?
Mr. Chairman, I believe she was one of those as well.
But getting back to how the mistake happened, right? Your evidence is that it was a misinterpretation by the HR, I would assume the person in HR who manages your payroll, which is a person down the totem pole who prepares your payroll for the month. as we understood from evidence given yesterday, the COO is also the person responsible for HR directly below the CEO. Can you confirm or would you know whether the COO signed off on this mistake? I know that.
Well, it's my understanding there wasn't a sign-off needed, or the HR department didn't feel there was, because it was taken as part of the pay policy,
Yeah, but, okay.
and
All
that
right.
was approved.
Maybe
by-
I phrased it wrong.
Okay.
Did not the COO, who's now also your CFO, right, see an increase in the monthly payroll for the organization?
I would say they must have done, yes.
And that went on for, in some cases, a year before anything was done about it.
Yes, I mean, until it was brought to our attention
Okay.
when they spotted it.
We haven't received the Deloitte report yet, but the CEO said yesterday that it was the Deloitte consultancy that recommending the discontinuing of a independent, but of a specialized, specific CFO in the organization and combining it with a COO.
That is correct, in their
Okay.
restructuring.
Okay. So going forward, the Turtle Farm will not be recruiting a COO who does not have professional accounting qualifications and can sign off as a CFO would do.
They'll be recruiting according to the job description as it is now.
The competencies for the COO job now, one of those is that you must have, professional accounting qualifications. As detailed yesterday by the CEO, you must have HR qualifications or experience. You must have tourism-related, i.e., restaurant, bars, sales stuff, experience or qualifications.
I would say if you tell me. So I've read it. I can't say I remember offhand exactly.
But
what's in that.
given how it is now structured, that what I am saying seems like a logical deduction, right?
Yes, yes.
Because my concern about that is that, getting back to the point raised for the member from West Bay, that is a very unique set of qualifications which is going to be hard to find in the local environment, because just the way the industry and the economy is structured in Cayman, if you're a professional qualified accountant, you are most likely to have spent your whole life as moving up in the accounting field to a CFO and not bother to look side employment in hotel management or HR management. Is there any concern of the board that if the person currently in the position decides to leave, there may be some difficulty in filling that position?
Mr. Chairman, I guess we haven't given it in consideration. What you've just said makes complete sense, and it may be something that we should look at. But I must say we haven't given consideration to a replacement or how we would replace.
I think part of the danger in that is that oftentimes we allow employees to tailor the job description to themselves and therefore almost guarantee employment. But what is the board doing And how are you going to manage the other 74 members of staff at the Turtle Center who did not get this windfall?
Well, I don't. I mean, the bottom line is that at the end of the day, these employees will be paying it back, and I think that's the angle. I mean, so far, I don't think, as far as I know, there hasn't been. I just heard that there were some resignations over this. I was not aware of that, and if that's because of this, then there's obviously something we're going to have to manage.
Is the board, or has the board considered any disciplinary action for the CEO on this mistake?
I don't know. We haven't.
Okay.
I think there was some discussion, as to where it happened, where it took place. But we feel it was a genuine mistake, and there was a genuine misreading and misinterpretation of what the pay policy guide said.
Well, I mean, and I don't expect that as the board and as a board chairman, you would be involved in that kind of minutia. But the thing that is most concerning to me is that the CEO was allowed to remain in the board, and it's going to be very interesting when we read the minutes to see whether it was him who proposed this unique settlement which allowed him to keep his money and continue to get it.
I'd have to say that it falls on me. I should have been, and I didn't. We were just trying to find a solution. I would say you're probably right. I mean, I think you are right. He shouldn't have been in on the discussions, but that would have fallen to me. It never was raised.
Right. Can you recall who suggested the 4 solutions to the problem? Was that the CEO?
I'm sure he was involved in it, but it was suggestions from everyone when this came to light. What do we do? And so I can't say that he was the one that came up with 4 solutions, but I think I'm sure he was involved.
Okay.
And so.
You have any question? Yeah, man.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I was just waiting patiently to give a member the opportunity. Mr. Chairman, well, the other chairman, Mr. Bryan, let's call it Mr. Bryan, because I think that's how we all grew up, referring to you anyway. As I said in my earlier statement, one of the things I'm primarily concerned with is the governance. And just out of curiosity, how many subcommittees of the board are there?
Mr. Chairman, through you, there are no subcommittees
Okay.
of the board. There.
Sorry? There are no subcommittees?
Of the board, no.
Okay, no, the reason why I raise that issue is that most boards will operate with different subcommittees, and those subcommittees would normally be staffed with the members of the senior management team. So in case you have, like, for example, you have an HR subcommittee that look at HR policies, procedures, and the likes. And then the person, the senior HR person for the organization would be there. Then you also will have a finance subcommittee that pretty much do the same thing, an operational subcommittee. And then those subcommittees would pretty much report to the entire board. And the whole idea behind that governance model is that it gives the board members also access to the first line reports of the CEO, so they can get a better idea sometimes in terms of how certain things within the organization is going. And of course, then you have the audit subcommittee, which is pretty much would deal with the auditors and everything else. So those are generally normally, and they will be staffed with different members of the board with different expertise. Because if one of the things you'll notice with most government boards is sometimes they literally structure out where they want an accountant, they want a person with a legal background, an IT background, and so forth to kind of do better with that. So I'm a little bit curious, and the reason why then that becomes necessary is that one of the things I was a bit surprised with yesterday is normally, and this is one of the things that came out back in, I think, 2002, 2003, when the whole collapse of Enron and Sarbanes-Oxley, where they start looking specifically at the CEO, the COO, and the CFO positions. They're pretty much the C-suites, as they refer to them as. And one of the things that came out of that, or glaringly came out of that, is that the role of the CFO is actually there to protect the interests of the shareholders. In other words, I use the term the corporate snitch, but they're the ones who are expected to kind of buck heads with other senior management to make sure at the end of the day that whatever decision is made right. So you can have a salesperson tasked with going out there to increase sales, but then the cost of increasing the sales sometimes isn't worth what it is. But in their books, they're just increasing sales, revenues coming in the book, and it can also even be bad business they bring it on to. And the role of the CFO is to keep them in line in terms of to make sure, well, yes, it sounds good, but it's bad business decision. So I give you an example of what I'm talking about. Looking at 2018 and 2019 for the results of the turtle farm or the turtle center, is that you'll see, and this is going from the financial statements, that revenues increase. Revenues for 2018 was 7,772,160, and revenues for 2019 was 7,911,852. So revenues actually increased just under 140,000, or 1.8% between 2018 and 2019. So you can sit back and say, well, that's good, revenues going up. But at the same time, the costs between 2018 and 2019 increased by over 361,000, which is 2.7%. So generally in finance, we refer to that as negative jaws, where if your revenues are growing fast, if your expenses are growing greater than your revenues, then your business is pretty much, your business model, something about it isn't working. And this is where the old tweaking coming in. And the role of the CEO and the COO is generally there in strategic, in terms of meeting the strategic objectives, but the CFO is there to kind of rein them in. And what I found now is that you have a governance structure where the two people tasked with the strategic direction, one of them is also in charge of the one position that's supposed to rein the other two in. So I am trying to figure out from the board standpoint, where you don't have your representative in senior management, which in essence would have been the CFO, what steps then are now being taken or is going to be taken to kind of have your eye on that day-to-day management, because you don't have the CFO there to look out for the shareholder. You don't have the subcommittee that gives you greater understanding of what is happening on a day-to-day. So I'm trying to figure out then what is it that the board does to get a grip in terms of what is going on within senior management. And that is the governance part that I'm just trying to ash out, or at least at the end of this, because as the chairman mentioned in his opening, this is not a got-you business. At the end of the day, all of us want the Turtle Center to succeed. And the reason why we do have these hearings is to ash these issues out, so at least we can all learn from each other, from different experiences and everything. So now the question then is, what structure or what governance is going to be done to basically get this into control? Because if you do look at the Turtle Center, I think there are 2 cases before the court right now, which is again because of poor internal controls. Things that should have easily been caught wasn't caught, and they have ended up being a criminal matters at this point. So it's clearly a breakdown of internal controls. Then you look at this other issue right now with regards to even the salaries. I mean, that again is also a breakdown of internal controls. And when you do look at your staff turnover rate, which is almost 20% for both 2018 and 2019, which is even well above the average within the civil service. And I think the CEO testified yesterday of the 19 that left, 10 were termination. So there is a culture where if you do mess up within the turtle farm, or the turtle center, that you will be fired. But that seems to only be at the junior level. And now we're trying to figure out how the governance structure works at the senior level, how are they held accountable? Because despite a lot of these different stuff, I think maybe only the IT manager, I think, is the one who's basically been, and that's because of his different issues in terms of what he did or allegedly did. And that's what we're trying to figure out, because it's clear that the oversight that the board needs for senior management isn't there. And the question is, in all of that, and I apologize for the long preamble, is what steps now is the board going to take to get a better grip on the governance of the Turtle Center?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I mean, you know far better than I, and the CFO position, I can't say I looked at it as a snitch. I think, in my mind, I've looked at it as someone who makes sure the finances are, like you say, if you should be picking up that your revenues are increases, but your expenses have gone, increased even more. That's not a good sign. So that's the kind of thing I see as CFO as. I didn't think of them as a snitch. Obviously, they're doing the accounts and presenting it to the board, and maybe I'm wrong in that, and we need to look at that as if that is what it should be.
No, so the reason I use the snitch because I used to be a CFO, and my other management colleagues used to refer to me as a little snitch, because I would say to them, listen, when I go to the board, I'm giving them it as is. So if you don't come correct, I'm snitching you out. And I would literally tell them, because the symbolic reason why I say the CFO is there as the representative shareholders is, well, don't use the word whistleblower, I use the word corporate snitch, because the reason being is that in any organization, the very first entry that is normally made in any ledger, even if the company goes back 100 years, is that credit to equity, which is the shareholders' money coming in, and then the debit, either cash, machine, or whatever it is. But the first entry has always been the shareholders' money putting up. And it's for us as CFOs, it sends a message that that first entry, that credit to shareholders' equity, is why we're there, is why this business is set up. And that has been the reason why it's been inculcated in us that we do work for the shareholders. And not, even though we're part of the senior management team, but our job as CFOs is to rein in the other members of senior management to do what is in the shareholders' best interest. And as I said, when you look at situations where expenses are growing faster than revenues, that is the conversation that the CFO, a person of equal rank, of equal seniority to both the CEO and the COO, can have that conversation. Having a finance manager that reports to a COO cannot have that conversation of saying to their boss that, listen, this is so-and-so. And normally, most boards that have a finance committee or a finance subcommittee or audit committee, you'd also find the CFO on it. And the CFO would also have access to his boss's boss, even though we report to the CEO on a day-to-day. That gives him the protection to do his job. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to hold people accountable, and yes, you're going to step on toes, you also need the protection of your shareholders, who's ultimately the boss of everything, to say, well, no, he's doing his job, leave him alone. And that environment needs to be there. Because, I mean, one of the things I was concerned about, even the last time I go around, is when you look at the breakdown of what had happened with the alleged cash that went missing, is that, one, a new person picked it up very quickly, which means it was quite evident in terms of the amount. But then at the same time, you had that person coming from the same organization that was also auditing. And sometimes, even though I'm not saying that the organization did something wrong, and this goes back to maintaining a certain level of independence, but when you do have people who you're worked with before auditing you, sometimes personal things, I'm not saying it happened, but these things may happen. And this is directly where you do need those situations in place where, at a minimum, the board is aware of it and can start taking certain things either with a grain of salt or at least have some idea how that should go. But it is the culture of the Turtle Center that we're trying to establish here. And then more importantly, what has happened. But what do we expect the governance structure to look like going forward in light of everything that has been disclosed here and has happened in the past? And that's what I'm trying to get a feeling of, is where now you as the chairperson of the Turtle Center sees the governance structure evolving to, because it is clear that what we have isn't working. So then what changes can the public expect, and can this committee expect in terms of what we can see from the Turtle Center going forward to hopefully start arresting some of these deficiencies that we have?
Thanks for the question, through you, Mr. Chair. The one comment, and I hear everything you say, and I mean you're probably right, and so it's something we'll have to look at in terms of the CFO. I mean, just a comment. Those two issues happened under the watch of a CFO, which was separate to a CEO and so on. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong or, whatever, but I view CEO, COO are all responsible to the shareholders. In effect, you guys, you're shareholders, you're representing the owners of the company. So they're all responsible to you, and so are we as the board. And whether they're called, whether it's a separate entity, and maybe it should be right. I have to take your guidance on that, and we'll explore that option and see whether it is the right thing or not. All we really did was follow what the study and the study through Deloitte and all the interactions recommended, and they seemed to think that was a good way of streamlining it and everything, and didn't seem to be an issue. We can explore whether that is an issue and whether it should be broken back out.
The thing about it is, and I mean, I know, and this goes back to the point that we were asking before, the engagement for Deloitte in terms of reference. Because if you go with an organizational efficiency terms of reference, where what can you do to make the organization more efficient, doesn't necessarily translate that you're going to improve or increase governance. Governance and efficiency are two complete different things. And the thing about it is why, and this is one of the reasons why the government sits back and literally have certain positions, whether people, business background, CPA background, or accounting background, legal background, economics background on these different boards, is at a minimum, I can tell you right now, very few CEOs can evaluate a CFO. It literally takes another CFO or another accountant to literally evaluate another accountant. And I can tell you, you can sit on a finance subcommittee, and by interacting with that CFO on a day-to-day basis, and being yourself that has been a successful businessman for years, you can look back and you can say from your own experience, this guy ain't switched on. This guy has lost it. And it is that interaction at the subcommittee level that give the board members them the comfort level to say, you know what, I got full confidence in this person at least to carry out what they're supposed to do. And it is that governance and that oversight. But as it stands right now, the board is literally having blinders on, where the only link in the senior management really is through the CEO. So then the ability to really evaluate him or to get a 360 evaluation of people on his level, below his level, and on his peer is very limited. So from that standpoint alone, the board is almost operating blindly, where it is just that one link into the senior management. And I think it is now to try to find a way to get more from understanding in terms of what some of these issues that are happening, and not just be dependent on one person doing a presentation where everybody else is pretty much his employees.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have in the past had some subcommittees, but it's usually a specialized task that we were looking at. We don't have any permanent ones, and maybe that's something we need to look at. Again, you're talking about the link from the CFO to the board. Every month, currently the COO, but before that, the CFO, every month came in and went through the monthly accounts and year-to-date accounts and explained them all to us and answered questions we had. So we have that interaction with them on a monthly basis. But other than that, we don't have the finance, a subcommittee set up, where we'd be meeting more often.
In terms of the board report itself, some boards that I worked in the past, they had a standard like 64 KPIs. I think in one company I was with, 64 KPIs of things that they would look at specifically every single month, which, on a line-by-line basis, so you look at it monthly, look at it quarterly, look at it year-to-date, and compare it to the same period, whatever. And then, so in terms of the KPIs that have been developed to look through to get the full grasp of that, is there a standard template that the board has established in terms of what they expect to be looking at to judge in terms of certain successes or whatever?
You'd have to explain to me what KPI is.
Oh, sorry. Key performance indicators. I apologize. And the reason why I say what I say is, and it goes back to the point I was looking at, because the rule in finance or in accounting is that when that CFO or that CEO comes and make that presentation to the board in terms of the previous month's results, there is nothing that anyone can do that's going to change what has happened. It has happened. And generally, they report on what has happened. The purpose of the board meeting is to take what has happened to predict or to manage risk in terms of what you think will happen if we make this change, or this change. That is ultimately why you do have those board meetings. They say, okay, well, based on this trend, if we continue here in the next 6 months, this is where we're going to be. But if we fix this or change this, this may become something else. And that is pretty much the difference between, what I say, bookkeeping and accounting, is one tell you what happened, one tell you what's going to happen. And so I'm trying to get an idea in terms of this typical board agenda, in terms of when you go through, like what specifically it is that each month you and your board members are basically looking at to say, well, you know what, we're happy with this or we're not happy with this. Is it a reporting session? Is it a discussion session? Is it an argumentative session?
Through you, Mr. Chair, typically we receive I guess you'd say the financial statements for that month and year, which would include year to date. And we also receive management reports, and those we receive before the meeting, and then during the meeting, the COO will come into the meeting and go through the financial statements, which shows all the expenses to date and for the month, and also all the income, we look at all of those items and compare them and try to discuss them and make comments on them. But I can't say we have a particular set of topics that we look at, but we look at the whole financial statement.
Okay, just to kind of understand, going back to, I guess, what would be the start of a financial year, like start with the budget process. I mean, what does your budget process or the budget process of the Turtle Center look like? Like, what was the format that was followed for that?
I mean, we create the budget based on previous, but also what we anticipate future in terms of income and so on. And I'm not sure exactly what you mean, but
okay. In terms of like the management would have normally prepared a draft budget plan for the board to approve. Mm-hmm. That when it was presented to the board, how was that draft budget presented?
It would be brought by the CEO and presented as a budget for the coming year.
Okay. Now, in terms of when it was presented by the CEO, I mean, was there any of the other staff, senior management staff, that came with him to the board? And I'm just trying, I tell exactly what I'm getting at, because like I said, I'm not trying to get into a gotcha thing, but what we're looking for typically is that when it comes onto a board and the budget is being prepared, what generally happens is each department, each section would come through and they'll present their section to the board to get that kind of sign off, because it gives the board, at least, because you're getting down into that underlying type information now, you know, where you can question them on a line by line. So you take marketing, for example. Yes, they'll give you a revenue, number, but then that revenue is driven, yes, it's by sales, but below that is certain assumptions that are being made, and at least it is that assumption level that we're trying to understand. Like, for example, if they get up and say they're going to grow X by revenues by X, part of that will be driven by, well, what numbers are the government looking for the air arrivals? What are you looking at for cruise arrivals? I mean, and I can tell from the some of the testimony yesterday that those are some of the stuff that are being looked at. So I'm not going to say it's not being done. I got the impression that some of it is being looked at. But then at the same time, trying to get into the macro type discussion or the assumptions that drive it, because at a minimum, it is at that starting point where the board can say, well, okay, these are the assumptions we know that we're looking at. These are those KPIs, those key performance indicators, where if air arrivals is up 1 month, I expect revenues to be up 1 month. If cruise arrival is up 1 month, I expect revenues to be up. So if someone comes inside here and revenues are down 1 month, but air arrivals and cruises is up, then clearly something is off. So yeah, I'm just trying to get into that in terms of kind of getting an idea of what's being done.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, and I say the CEO, but the COO or the CFO previously would have been in on the presentation of the budget as well. And we've had the marketing officers in to present what their position is and what they're attempting to do for the coming year. But the budget is really prepared by those guys, and then it's presented to us, and we can ask the questions and do ask the questions of why and what the amounts are and so on.
Just out of curiosity, in terms of even going back to like the salary issue, I mean, if salaries jump up or staff costs jump up 1 month to 1 month, or over a period of 3 months compared to the same period in the prior year, I mean, at what point would someone ask the question, wait a minute, why did this cost go up by this percentage, or why did this go up by that, to not realize then that someone did something without the board approval? Like, how was that presented?
Well, I mean, we do look at wages or salary each, because that's in the financial statement. And I must say, I can't, when this was occurring, and I think it's it isn't a massive amount, so maybe it didn't show up.
Was it was 23,000 a month?
No, total of 23,000.
For the year?
No, well, it's 23,000 is the amount that's been paid. It's an average, if you average in total. In total, it's an average of maybe 900 per person. So it's 24 people, as I understand it, which till October had received, the total was 23,000, was the amount paid, which shouldn't have been paid.
Yeah, but this is over what period of time? So it was what, 23,000?
It varied, but up to a year, as Mr. Chairman has pointed out. But some were less, because some took effect more recently.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chairman, thanks.
I just need to clarify, particularly for the listening public, the commencement of the Public Authorities Law, because I think we allowed the CEO and the COO to bail themselves out yesterday by saying that a particular section of the Public Authorities Law had not commenced. And just for the listening public, we have this thing that we put in laws now in clause 2 that usually says this law shall come into effect by a commencement order published by Cabinet. The original commencement order for the Public Authorities Law, which was published in 2017, said the order may be cited as the Public Authorities Law 2017, Commencement Order 2017. 2.1. The provisions of the Public Authorities Law 2017, with the exception of Section 47, shall come into force on the first day of June 2017. 2. Section 47 of the Public Authorities Law 2017 shall come into the force on the first day of June 2018. Then we have something that was issued on the 29th of May 2018, which altered that original commencement order for Section 47. This order may be cited as the Public Authorities Law 2017 Commencement Order 2018. The Public Authorities Commencement Order 2017 is amended in Regulation 2.2 by deleting the words first day of June 2018 and substituting the words first day of June 2019. So Section 47 is the only section of the Public Authorities Law that did not commence in 2017. And the old adage is, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Certainly the board of Cayman Turtle Center should have been expecting that Section 47 of the Public Authorities Law would have come into effect on the 1st of June 2018. It wasn't until 18th to 29th May 2018 that was changed until the 1st of June 2019. But that was only Section 47, which means that salary increases, which is covered by Section 48 of the Public Authorities Law. That section of the law was into effect, right? That section of the law says a public authority shall not award a cost of living adjustment for staff of a public authority unless permitted to do so by cabinet. Section 2, subsection 1 does not apply to individual salary changes, and that is the section that the COO and the CEO relied on yesterday to claim that they were not in contravention of this law because it was only individuals, right? But it happened to be the whole top management, right? And 4 says, a public authority shall not introduce a bonus or performance payment scheme for staff of the public authority unless the public authority is permitted to do so by the cabinet. So the mistake, right, would have had, in my view, cabinet approval before it could be implemented. It is unfortunate that the board had to seek legal advice as to whether they needed cabinet approval after that had been ongoing for some time.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think we sought legal advice as to whether we had to go to cabinet. We sought legal advice as to what our remedies and you know what had happened and what was their opinion on that. There was a discussion at the board, and at least one member felt it was a pay raise, so we should go to cabinet and ask retrospective approval. But I think in the end, we did not feel it was a pay raise. I mean, our decision is to try and claw it back. We didn't want to we don't want to go to cabinet and say, can you give us a pay raise for these guys? That's not what the intention was. And so it didn't feel right to the board. And as I say, in the end, the decision was made to go with the option where we, at the end of the day, claw it back. But we felt it was not a pay raise, and we didn't want to go and ask for a pay raise because that's not what we were trying to do. It was a genuine mistake made in the interpretation.
In the end, based on what the board has decided to do of the 4 options, it has in fact been interpreted to the board as a pay raise, because you're making the adjustment by not giving future pay raises based on the fact that that one was mistakenly granted.
That is true.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of the matter of the CEO not recusing himself from these discussions by the board is clearly a conflict with Section 43(2). Says where a member of the senior staff has any actual or potential personal or commercial financial interest, either directly or indirectly, in a transaction or decision being considered by the board, the staff member shall disclose the nature of the interest to the chief executive officer as soon as possible after the relevant circumstances have come to the staff member's knowledge. In this case, the CEO had an obligation to inform the board that he was a beneficiary of this thing and that he was recusing himself.
Chairman, could you just tell me the section again?
Section 43 of the Public Authorities Law. And Section 1 says, all senior staff, prior to assuming the function of their office, make a declaration to the Commission of Standards and Public Life in accordance with the Standards and Public Life Law 2014. I'm assuming that the board has already insisted that all of their senior staff has complied with 43(1). If not, you may want to check on that, and if it hasn't been done, make sure it's done as a matter of urgency.
Disclosure of, say that again.
It says all senior staff, prior to assuming the function of their office, make a declaration to the Commission of Standards and Public Life in accordance with the Standards and Public, and that is under the section of the Standards and Public Life Law. That is a declaration of interest, I think. and there's a form which they need to complete and submit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much, Mr. White, and we look forward to meeting in the future.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you, and I appreciate that it was not adversarial, and that's a good thing. I just want to say that we're trying to do very well, and I would say that from everything I've seen, the Turtle Center has really made great strides, especially for not since I've been there. Before I was there, they've really begun to turn it around, and I know the member, Mr. Saunders, has mentioned a culture. I have to say I don't feel that culture in the Turtle Center, and if we did, we would really make an action against it. And I invite anyone to come up, Mrs. Saunders in particular, come and meet, come into the offices and talk to whoever you want, and all the staff. And
Unfortunately, that may represent a conflict of interest for us as public accountants having to do the accounting.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that would be,
Okay.
but I mean,
No.
I will come there for 1 happy hour, though. I would definitely will pass down. I have enough invitations to come
or
down.
if the other thing.
He can't take any free drinks. Make sure he pays for his drinks. Remember, Mike.
No, don't even want to start with that. You forgot the person you beat in the 2009 elections with that. I don't know.
The other thing, please, anyone who's ever hears anything, I'm always willing to listen to whatever anyone has to say, and I think all the board are. And I can only say we're trying our best, and it's a very good board as I can see, and we're proud of what they're doing. So, but I thank you very much for today, sir.
Committee is adjourned until 1:30. Thank you.